Yeah, g'day TryPod family. Welcome back to the TryPod Live with Winny and Clarkey here for our round 24 NRL preview. Some of you might have just seen that thumbnail and wondering what the hell is going on. Well, I'm going for a different strategy this week. Last week I went Winny, can this guy keep the streak alive? I've gone the complete opposite this week in hopes it will find us results. Just mentioned that man, Winny. Let's go across to him, mate. How are you feeling?
It's a bold strategy, DJK Clark, but we'll see how we go. We're off a rough round 23. I took all favourites. I only got one to cover the line, and that was probably thanks to a send-off and a couple of late tries, and still only covered by 2 points there with the Warriors. And then we watched the other sides I backed, the Knights, the Eels, the Raiders. They struggled to win, let alone cover, and Souths were beaten outright. So we went 1-4 on best bets, lost the mixed matchup, lost the SGM. But I got to tell you, mate, I'm not backing down from some more favourite sides in round 24, to be honest.
Mate, I love it. It was a bit of a weird round last week. I think the week before, all the favourites won. And then in just the classic fashion that is this season, huge spanner goes into the works and form goes out the window. But let's go to our round 24 NRL best bets. What have you got for that in the waivers?
Share that right now. Let us know if you can hear us and see us, guys. Send your comments through and let us know what you think of my best bets and whether we are going to bounce back. I am taking the Cronulla Sharks at home at -8.5, $1.90 best price on Better. So they host the Titans. I'm taking the Rabbitohs -17.5 at $1.89 on Sportsbet. They play the Dragons in Cairns. I'm playing the Roosters -9.5 at $1.90 best price Better, hosting the Dolphins. And I'm also taking Knights Bulldogs, either team 1-12, yes, at $2.365. So to go through those first three favourites, Sharks 8.5, Rabbitohs 17.5, Roosters 9.5. I'll summarise all three by saying the home team, or the designated home team, they're superior. The home team's season is alive. The away team's is not. The away teams are all interstate in the Gold Coast, the Dragons and the Finns, and I can't find enough reasons why those sides will be bang up for these trips. And even if they are, whether they can last in the contest against Cronulla, South Sydney and the Roosters, who all possess the greater firepower. Specific reasons to come match by match. And then as for the Bulldogs Knights, let me say Bradman Best is out for the Knights. The Dogs are off the bye. The Knights are off significant travel. The Dogs are far stronger than they were 5 weeks ago and motivated by revenge. So I will back them to make that one closer than others may expect on Sunday. Arvo, what do you think of those? Danger, Clark.
Mate, off the top, I tell you what, having done my prep and my notes, I'm actually against you with 3 out of 4 of those, which is the most this year. So we are in for a very interesting preview for each game when we get there. We can see the comments rolling through. Welcome, Jeff, AT, Adam, and others. We appreciate you all being here.
So we really are going head-to-head this week.
Yeah, we really are. We will jump into our game-specific preview in just 1 second. Before we get to that, we've got a clip from Tristan Merlehan, the CEO of Top Sport, with some exclusive market insights.
G'day everyone, Tristan Merlehan here from Top Sport. And last week it was a crazy week in terms of how everything fell. It looked like there were a lot of favourites that were going to be very, very difficult to beat, and there were a lot of multis rolling a heap of them up. And I was battling to find a way that we were going to get an upset, and it looked like everything was going according to plan. I thought probably our most likely result was Manly getting an upset early, and then the Roosters just dominated that game despite a couple of late tries for Manly. And then the Titans gave us a little bit of a hope despite the send-off, and they were right in that game for a long period, but then the Warriors kicked away and ultimately covered the spread, which was very disappointing. Out there at Seabus Stadium, Penrith way too good. And then there was a massive push towards the Cowboys, obviously on the back of no Adam Reynolds, and the Broncos, they got the job done. So that was our best result of the game. We did take a really big 1-12 bet, which sort of offset the money towards the Cowboys. And then the late Selwyn Cobbo intercept, I'll have to certainly send him a gift basket, because that was something that I certainly didn't expect to happen, that late intercept try, and there was a lot of jubilation in our office. And then that still left a lot of the multis in play, and we thought we were a chance with the Dolphins late, but the Knights were too good. And then, of course, the massive upset with the Sharkies getting over the top of the Bunnies, which I don't think anyone saw coming. So that was our equal best result with the Broncos game. And then Sunday, there was not a lot of activity. Obviously, both of the favourites won but didn't cover the spread, so there wasn't a lot to be done there. But it was a strange old week of football. It certainly made this the finals race, very, very open now. We've got a couple of games which are very, very crucial towards where the sides sit. The Roosters have probably some chance now of sneaking back into the 8. You got the Bunnies who now are no certainty of getting there. There's a massive game for the Eels as well. The biggest move of the weekend has been the Manly Seagulls against the Panthers, 18.5 into 15.5. That's obviously on the back of some outs. We'll have to monitor all of these teams as we get a bit closer to jump time. We also have our EPL custom market set up as well. So if you want to get involved there, you've got until the close of play tonight. I'll price them all up tomorrow. I'm out of play on Friday. So make sure you get anything through by the end of play tonight if you want to get involved in your custom EPL markets, and we'll get as many priced up as we can on Thursday. Good luck if you're having a bet over the weekend, and of course, gamble responsibly.
I love that exclusive insight from Tristan. When I was watching the Broncos game and Coppo got that intercept, that was actually one of my first thoughts. I thought that's going to upset a lot of people that were on the 1 to 12 and make a lot of people cheer that had them 13 plus.
I'll tell you, mate, Tristan actually, I was talking to Tristan Saturday. I said, this is going to be one of those weekends where all the favourites win and everyone's multis win. And I was with him. You guys know I liked all the favourites. And Tristan said, of all the multis, they were sweating one that had like the Adelaide Crows. Anyway, they won easy. And it had like Knights, Raiders, South Sydney to win, and Cowboys plus 12.5. And this was on Saturday, he was telling me. And he's like, we just need one of those legs to lose or we're screwed. And, and I thought, well, Cowboys are probably going to win, let alone they're not going to lose 13 plus. So when Cobbo took that intercept, I thought that'll save Top Sports bacon. In the end, Souths lost anyway. I'm sure Souths was in nearly everybody's multi because I don't know anyone who was smart enough to pick Sharks apart from maybe Phil Gould. I don't know if we should share that inside joke or not. But also just the other note there from Tristan, English Premier League. I don't know if you knew this, Clarkey. I'm also a soccer expert. The World Cup was last year, and I had Morocco at 15 to 1 to make the quarterfinals. No one else had them coming out of the group stage. But that was probably just a bit of luck. I deep dived into the Soccer World Cup every 4 years, but I don't follow the overseas club football to that level. Other people in the TryPod group do. The Premier League kicks off this weekend. If you're interested, Tristan was referring to the fact that he is pricing up everybody's custom requests as long as you get them in by tonight on the post that I've put up on the TryPod Facebook group. And there's been heaps and heaps of people commenting their combinations. So Tristan has his work cut out for him there.
He's got his work cut out. So if you are listening from my page specifically right now, TryPod, search it on Facebook, join the group there. Bets, banter, everyone's in it. And the chance to price up your own EPL multis as well.
Even if you don't necessarily have your own, check it out on Top Sports. So under their Premier League or their soccer markets, you'll find like the TryPod custom requests. And these are always good fun because you can just throw a few dollars and have something that you can get, 38 weeks of entertainment from checking how all the legs are doing.
Mate, I love it. Let's jump into our NRL specific preview for round 24. It kicks off on Thursday night. It is Manly v Panthers. We're at 4 Pines Park, Brookvale Oval, and the line is set at minus 15.5 in the Panthers' favour. They will be without Jerome Luai and Mitch Kenny, who have been ruled out earlier today, and Isaac Tungo also remains sidelined, so Zach Hosking remains at centre there. For the Seagulls, they'll be without Matt Lodge, so Sean Kepi returns at prop for there. And I think this one's a pretty easy one to tip, Winnie. You're not going to throw anything crazy in this one, are you?
No, I can't. I can't tell you any reason why anyone's going to beat Penrith at this point in time. The Seagulls especially were dealt a mega blow by the Roosters last week, a game where they had it all to play for but trailed 22-0. It was really only a send-off that opened the back door ajar a little bit. Nevertheless, Manly fell short. Lodge is out for the season too. Kepi does come back to start there to cover that loss a little bit. Penrith pumped the Storm by 20 and they've looked unbeatable. Really, if you look at any game where Penrith's been full strength or near full strength, they've looked unbeatable. So you throw out like the Origin weeks. I guess Penrith's not at complete full strength this week, as you said, with Luai, Kenny, Tungo was in the reserves last week. He's all omitted altogether this week. Back on Penrith's game last week, I have to say it's a shame that Hughes and Coates got ruled out after our pod because I could kind of see maybe Melbourne keeping it within 10 if those guys were playing. Once they were out, it was pushed beyond doubt that Melbourne had no real hope in that game. So it was probably a good spot to lay the points with Penrith because I had no interest in going against the back-to-back premiers. Manly's got even less chance than Melbourne. Most people would probably agree. And then you couple that with the disappointment from last week where a pathway to the finals was actually a lot more possible last week. So I'm definitely not betting against Penrith. The only question is, would I take Manly? Luai out reduces the threat of the left side attack for Penrith, but probably means Cleary does more, which is scary as well. What will keep me off going against Manly is they are at home, so they could raise an effort here. They're a temperamental team that turns out their fair share of duds, but occasionally can also put on a strong show, which I hope will be the case so we could get a entertaining game for the majority of Thursday night.
Yeah, fingers crossed they can keep it close, but it does sort of loom as one of those Thursday night blowouts, which we have had a fair few of, if I can remember off the top of my head. I did see a stat earlier today, Manly are 5 from 7 at home this year. I haven't checked that any further, but if that's true, I certainly remember the upset of the Storm. I think we were both tipping that one. But in this one, realistically, I think Panthers could rest a few more players and still comfortably win this one, just with the amount of depth they've got. Like, they lose Jerome Luai, but Jack Cogger comes back in, who's been in really great form there. For the Panthers, their forward pack, Mitch Kenny does drop out, but we know that Sonny Luke's also a Tongan international player. When I say their forward pack is world-class, it literally is. I think almost every single player in their starting pack is a rep player. And that's not to say Manly doesn't have some good players, forwards in particular. Ola Kawatu, Jake Trbojevic come to mind. But you have to give a real edge to the Panthers there. And I just think if they're able to win that middle, Nathan Cleary really controlling this game with Jerome Luai out, we will see Nathan Cleary pick up 6 Dally M points, I believe. I think he's going to really dominate and take over this one. The Panthers have won their last 7 straight over the Seagulls. And I just think, you compare both these lineups, you look at form, there's not too much further to analyze. My play is Panthers 13+, and I think Brian To'o, anytime try scorer, he's got 6 tries in his last 4. And as you said, with Jerome Luai, they probably play the right side a little bit more, which does open up for To'o there. Friday, Sharks v Titans at PointsBet Stadium. At this stage, I will be going to this one, so I'm excited. The line is set at -10.5 in the Sharkies' favour. For them, Ronaldo Mulatalo returns. For the Titans, Tino Fa'asuamaleaui and Jaeman Joliffe return. However, Moeki Fotuaika is out, as is Sam Verrills and Brimson. I know you've got a best bet on the Sharkies here. I'm going the other way. So go ahead, let it rip. Why do you love the Sharkies in this one?
Well, come on, mate. You've got to share that sort of important information with me prior to the show. Would never go the -8.5. And as you can see, 10.5 on Toppy, but 8.5, 9.5 in a couple other spots. Better was the best price. I would never have done that if I knew the Titans' #1 supporter was going to be in attendance. Although I guess when I went to see the Dolphins, it didn't work out so well for them. Maybe it added too much pressure. And I have to admit, I was wrong about both of these sides last weekend. I thought they both might not have much to give, and they both fought basically for the entirety of their game. The Sharks pulled off the upset of the round, and you have to feel the Titans could have pulled an upset too if they didn't play for 60 minutes with 12 men. The difference between these two sides, though, is that the Sharks win revitalized their whole season, whereas the Titans the Titans effort is a feel-good effort. And I can look back at, I think it's like the last 2 months of Titans games, and I can really only pick out one bad effort, which was the Roosters game, where even there you did fight back, score the final 3 tries. Every other game you've either won or gone close, to be fair. Tino back might be the boost, along with yourself being in attendance, but losing Fotuaika, Verrills out, AJ is out again, that doesn't help, while Mulatalo, being on track to return would boost the Cronulla side. And they're in this position that they thrive in, that they get to be returned to the role of the bully. You're at home, they're playing a Titan side that I could see the Sharks breaking the Gold Coast. So basically that's how I see this game in a nutshell. I think the Titans could hang in if they can replicate that effort of the last 2 months. But I'm sorry to be that downer. I could just so easily see this being the game where the Titans crack after playing so many, full 80-minute efforts. And I do think Trindle is freeing up Hines since he's been moved into the halves. And I cautioned, what a massive loss Kennedy was a week ago. We'll have to acknowledge Tracy not only is so versatile, but a talented player that covers that key position.
I'm in 2 minds here. I do agree with every point you just said, and I think that it could go one or two ways. The Titans could really could have really turned a corner. And they could have this great steal and this great edge and integrity about what they do for 80 minutes. But it could be the other way where it's just, hey, we're putting in all this effort. We're not getting the results and the wins. And the heads could certainly drop. But I do have to say, I really have liked what I've seen from my side, particularly last week. And I do probably think this is a more winnable game than what people will give us credit for. I think the Sharks deserve to be favourites. I wouldn't say anything other than that. And Sharks do have a great record against bottom 8 sides. But you know what? I don't quite view the Titans in that category. I think we're better than that, despite what the ladder says. We have wins over the Broncos and Storm this year, both the top 4 sides. And we matched it with the Warriors, who is another top 4 side, with 12 men for 63 minutes. And it was drawn at the 73-minute mark. They scored 2 late. And I don't want to go too far, but I think we could have won that game if we had our full side for the whole time. I'm not going to say we're going to compete with the Panthers next week. They're going to beat us. They're in a world class of their own. But when we look at the remaining 3 top 4 sides, we've either beaten them or completed really bloody hard against the Warriors there. And so the Sharkies, they do average 14 points against top 4 sides. Sorry, I want to go to the Rabbitohs game. I've got my stats wrong there last week. And although the Sharkies did bounce back and they looked really, really good in doing that, I do have to wonder how much of that was the Rabbitohs looking poor. And the stats that I've got is them averaging 14 against top 4 sides and then suddenly conceding 26 against the Sharks, who had really struggled to score in recent weeks outside of that final 10 minutes there against Manly. Tino and Joel are 2 very big inclusions, so I'm going to give a confidence rating of 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10 that we cover the line, not the win. I am going against the stats, though. Sharkies have won over us 8 in a row. We haven't beaten them for 5 years. We are 2 out of 9 in away games this year, and only 3 members of our current squad have ever won at the Sharks' home venue. So I'm definitely going against the stats. My play on this one, Titans at the line plus David Fafita. Anytime try scorer. Our next Friday game is the Broncos v Eels at the Gabba. The line is set at minus 11.5 in the Broncos' favour, who welcome back Reynolds, Ricky, and Hetherington. For the Eels, Dejan Arce moves to centre and Bailey Simonson to the wing. Broncos have answered everything and a bit more, Winnie. Eels will be desperate. Can you see an upset happening here?
It's possible. I mean, I did a double take when I saw Arce in the centres. He'll have his work cut out from having to defend Katoni's Stags. You've got Brisbane, who was super in Townsville across the board last week. So there's no reason to doubt them here. They've still got their eyes on the minor prem. I'm sure they'd love to win that. They still have a chance. Someone's probably going to have to beat Penrith, but who knows, and who knows what shenanigans could take place the final week. But more importantly, and I mentioned this on the recap, Brisbane needs to keep winning to stay a step ahead of New Zealand to ensure that likely week 1 finals matchup, which is very likely to be Broncos Warriors, Brisbane wants to ensure that's at Suncorp and not Mount Smart, because that's a big swing and a big difference. As for Para, I guess we zoom out, they're last year's grand finalists. Their season is kind of on the line. Let me explain their situation. The Eels have 3 games left and a bye. But the equation is they really must win 2 of 3. Okay, if they only win 1 of the remaining 3, they're most likely going to miss. But if they win 2 of their final 3, they're basically going to find their way into the 8. The only problem is 2 of their final 3 are in Brisbane and in Penrith. So you have to get the upset in 1, realistically. And there's no time like the present. So I could see the Eels going all out here to try and achieve that. Once again, when I look at the matchup, just can't help but think that brain snap by RCG, like you're going up against Brisbane, whose middle triumvirate is Haas, Flegler, Carrigan. You're missing your test prop. That has let that team down so much. So I'm not going to play Para in here. I could see them hyped for an upset. You've got Gutho, Brown, Moses. You've got players that can make things happen. But if Brisbane do to Para what they've done to so many sides this year and just kind of take the game away from the Eels, and the Eels realise they can't win it, and there's 20, 30, 15 to go, that can be where Brisbane can break you back, where you're down on the back of Reynolds' kicking game and can kick away. So that's why I haven't touched this one.
Yeah, it's a really tough one for me to play the line in this one. Broncos have not let many people down this year in a lot of their performances, but the Eels are just going to have a different sort of desperation in this one, and the importance of it, as you said, will not be lost. It's essentially a must-win. I know they got a great regular season record over the Panthers. They beat them twice last year, and they did beat them early this year as well at home. It was a really tight game, if I remember correctly. So they'll know the importance of this one. It's must win, but I just question if they're good enough this year. And I have sat here for most weeks, particularly earlier in the season, said they'll still play the top 8. They'll come good. And they just haven't quite gotten to the level that they need to be at. I think they got away with one last week against the Dragons. They conceded 20 there. And if their defense doesn't improve in this one, Broncos will score 40. Where this gets interesting, Broncos have scored 534 points this year. The Eels, one less at 533. So that's first and second in the whole competition. We could be in for an AFL score here at an AFL ground in the Gabba. But on the Broncos' 5-game current win streak, they're averaging 33 points. So I have to imagine they win here. In saying that, though, along this 5-game win streak, the Broncos are conceding 17 points. So they're scoring about double what they're conceding, but they are still conceding an average of 3 tries there. So I think the Eels will score a couple. For that reason and those stats there, I can't really pick a line either way. So my play in this one would just be Broncos head-to-head and the points over market. Don't forget, this week we will have another same-game better. Sorry, let me go again. A same-game multi, thanks to Better. Our Better sign-up link is in the show description here live, and if you're listening as a podcast, and of course, if you do sign up, make sure to message the TryPod page on Facebook. But before you sign up to any bookie, think, what are you prepared to lose today? Set a deposit limit. For free and confidential support, call the number or visit the website on screen. And if you're listening as a podcast, that information is also in the description. Winnie, have you singled out a game for the Better same-game multi just yet?
Not yet. All my attention's on the best bets. I'll try and find either, whether it is that Friday night, you make a good point, if there could be plenty of offense on show, could be a good game to pick some try scorers, or else I'll dial in on a game where I've got a strong conviction in one of my best bets.
I might take over the Better same-game multi this week, guys. Titans 13+ into Fafita. Hello, Fiona Khan-Pereira and Jaden Campbell. Anytime try scorers. Saturday, it's the Rabbitohs v Dragons up in Cairns, and the line is set at -18.5 in the Bunnies' favour. They will be without Tom Burgess. I was about to say Sam Burgess. They'll be without him as well soon. Shakai Mitchell, Jacob Host, and Tane Milne all return. For the Dragons, Francis is out, so his brother Michael starts. Moses Sully returns, but Zach Lomax is out injured. And I think that's a really, really big loss given his recent form. You're on the Bunnies in this one. I'm going to go the other way, but your chance to go first.
Well, the Bunnies continue their amazing race around Australia. Is it a negative factor for me? Not yet. I think there is a bonding element and a mission element to having the team all together and fully focused on this charge to the finals, where the margin for error is getting narrower and narrower because they really have to win this game. I mean, if the Bunnies lose this one, then they're in serious danger of missing the finals, where we've been talking them up the past few weeks as making an assault on the 4 and being a true challenger. I also have to admit, over the last few weeks, I've been on Souths as the best bet pretty much since they've had all their rep players back. We have gone 1 and 2 in those 3 weeks that I've been on them, and Burgess is a significant loss because Totola's still out. And I can't remember if you mentioned, Arrow with the back spasms. Like that's, he's no certainty as well. The Dragons, getting back to your point about Para being lucky, what a scare St. George gave them. And one moment I forgot to mention on the recap, but it was a vital moment, was the no try call on Amon, which the NRL has since renounced, basically admitted that it was an error that Gutho stripped at the ball. And if St. George scores at that juncture in the game, they'd probably win. That would have put them up 16 points in the second half, I believe. So that's tough. But then again, when you're a team that's down on your luck and you get something like that, I don't think the NRL admitting they're wrong makes you feel any better. In fact, sometimes those ones where you had hope just makes it hurt all the more. You said Lomax is injured. I hadn't read that, but I knew he was out. So I wasn't sure if he was dropped again or obviously Jack Bird is out as well. And you mentioned Francis Molo. But what it comes back to for me is pretty simple. I mean, call me square if you like, but I feel like Souths are on the nose with a lot of punters, so we still get a slight discount in the line. I just won't be surprised whatsoever if Souths wipe the floor with the Dragons here. As I said at the top, there's too much firepower. If you want to poke holes in South Sydney, you'll say the middle rotation is weakened. I agree, because I think they had an elite middle rotation when everyone's available, but you've still got the likes of Moali on the bench. Tallis Duncan's been a revelation. And with it being a 3 p.m. game, a neutral venue where it will be a bit of a footy showcase, as we often see. I don't really see it as a forward battle. I think there'll be plenty of attacking footy, and I think Souths are going to show out. And I don't want to fall in the trap of backing Souths every week, like hoping this will be the week they come good. I just really believe that we're still getting solid odds here, and I really question what the Dragons can bring to the table, because I feel like Souths have the edge over them virtually across the board, apart from halfback.
You mentioned the travel there, and I'm really interested. When was the last time the Dragons played outside of Sydney or Wollongong? It's all the way back in round 13 when they went to Redcliffe to take on the Dolphins. Let me start with the Dragons. I've actually liked what they've done in the last few weeks. I think there has been a fair bit of fight in this side, but I do think a lot of that is courtesy of Zach Lomax hitting arguably career best form. And with him out, you really have to wonder what sort of question mark does that create over the Dragons. With that being said, though, they have still been in a lot of contests this year. It's 7 games that they've lost by 6 points or less. So an 18.5 head start here, 3 converted tries. It is somewhat appealing. The Rabbitohs are just really hard for me to tip at the moment. They've conceded 30 points in 6 of their last 10 games. And I think it's fair to say now they probably struggled against the Sharks and Tigers. I didn't view the Tigers game as them struggling at the time. I viewed it as they were just blowing out the cobwebs, ready to go against the Sharks. And looking back now with hindsight, that's probably not the case. The Cairns home advantage is also no home ground for them. They are 1 from 4 there. And I just want to go back to the travel aspect, Winnie. So round 23, 10 weeks ago was the last time the Dragons had to leave the comfort of their home state. Whereas for the Rabbitohs, it's been, I can't remember, but it's certainly Perth, back home, now up to Cairns. It's definitely more
Sunshine
travel.
Coast, Tamworth, now Cairns.
They've been everywhere, man, literally. And so I probably do favour the Dragons here. I know it'll be just my luck that I've been with South for so many weeks now, and this will be the week they decide to show up and get me. But look, I'm going to play the Dragons here at the line, and I'm going to throw in Michaeli Ravalawa, anytime try scorer. He's scored 18 from his last 17, coming off 4 tries. You have to think if the Dragons are in it, he is a likely try scorer there. Saturday, we are in Hamilton, New Zealand for the Tigers v Warriors. It's a Tigers home game, but the line is set at minus 15.5 in the Warriors' favour. They'll be without Chance Nickel-Klugstar, so Tane Tuapiki remains at fullback. For the Tigers, Sean Bloor and Utu Ikamanu return, but Charlie Staines is out again. I can't remember back to the best bets. Did you have a play on the Warriors here, or do you like either way on this one?
No, I left this one alone. I want to say, firstly, good on West for giving up a home game to New Zealand. I feel like more teams should do it as a gesture of gratitude for what the Warriors sacrificed over those COVID seasons. CNK is a big loss, as you mentioned, but Tuapiki is a little live wire that adds something different for New Zealand, who have been pretty fortunate over the last few weeks to be relatively settled in their lineup, for many weeks not have to make too many changes. West gave a lot more than I expected in Canberra, beat our best bet, and now get back Stefano and Bloor as well. I've questioned several teams, right? The Titans, they're in Sydney. Were they going to bring that show on the road? The Dragons are in Cairns. And I've gone best bets against those sides, but I haven't bet against West, who are in New Zealand. However, you would throw them in the same bag as a team with questionable motivation. I mean, the Tigers are bottom of the ladder, so you're not bottom of the ladder unless you fail to be consistent. And you compare that to New Zealand's been just about up there with the most consistent sides in the whole competition. So I can't bet the Tigers here. That's why I'm not on the start. I look at New Zealand and you think about laying the points. I think we're fortunate to cover the line with New Zealand being on them last week, getting those late tries, as you mentioned. I'm not going to be shocked. Nobody will be shocked if the Warriors win this really well. But I don't know. I look at the West Tigers and I still see the likes of Bulla and Toa, Tupu, Dane Laurie in the halves there with Brooks and Appy, since he's back from the broken jaw, Yuto Kamanu, Papali, Bateman, Pole. They can make this interesting. And I know people might call me out and say, well, they had most of those guys last week and you best bet them with Canberra. But I feel like, well, it was 10.5 last week. I know New Zealand's clearly better than Canberra, but West showed a lot of fight. So that's got to count for something. So maybe that line was a bit high last week. West got some dodgy refereeing calls as well and still nearly won. And West are stronger this week with the players that return. and the line's 14.5. So that's why I wouldn't play the line. Look, if you're looking for a bet, maybe 13 plus field invaders based on the scenes that we saw in Napier.
I'm going through the Tigers' recent weeks based on what you said there, and you're right, they have shown a fair bit of fight. Really, the last game they didn't show fight was round 19. The Sharkies took care of them. Well, actually, no, they were in that game. I remember watching it. Sharkies drew away with it in the second half. So you go back to round 18 where they were embarrassed 74-0. So they have shown a fair bit of fight. Let's start with the fact they've taken one of their home games to New Zealand to say thank you for the Warriors and what they did during COVID. A really, really great touch. But unfortunately, it won't help them out here. I believe the Warriors, in a way, blew the cobwebs out, returning from a bye against the Titans last week. And it's probably one of those things, too. I've got to go back to what I said about the Titans. I did talk us out that we've beaten these top four sides, Winnie, but let's be honest, the Broncos, Storm, and Warriors were nowhere near their best when they all faced us. So I do think the Warriors, back in the grind of things, back at home, I think they'll be primed for a great game here. They've won their past 4 over the Tigers. And the Tigers are conceding an average of 7 tries in their past 6 games. So while certainly the attack and the effort is there, and they are scoring points to stay in these contests, that's a concerning stat. 7 tries on average. Sean Johnson's kicking it close to 80% this year. That's just under 40 points statistically up for grabs here for the Warriors. Now, I do have a note here that I can't see anything but a Warriors blowout. But then I saw Ryan say, I'm with the Undertaker here on under 48.5. And I did have to go and check. It is scheduled to rain during this game in Hamilton. It's a 43% chance it's raining. And I think if it does rain, that does really play into the unders because it would just slow up the Warriors that touch. And then we know the Tigers do have some points in them. And it could also lean to a play plus 15.5 for the Tigers. So I won't play this one until we know what the weather's doing. If I'm absolutely honest there, I think that can really play into it, particularly in New Zealand, where it is cold, wet, and windy. Saturday, Roosters v Dolphins. We're at Allianz Stadium, and the line is set at minus 9.5 in the Roosters' favour. Dylan Napa returns for his first game since the 2018 NRL Grand Final. He's played, I think, almost close to 20 games this year from a New South Wales Cup, so he still is ticking over the miles. Nathan Brown's out suspended. For the Dolphins, Ray Stone returns. Nick Arima to fullback, Hammer back to the centres. This is something the Dolphins keep tinkering with. Straight off the top, Winnie, I am against you on this one as well, mate, but over to you for why you like the Roosters in this one.
I guess Bennett was playing games last week. They named Hammer at fullback last week. Can't remember if he played like the first couple of minutes there, almost just to mess with the Knights, but Nick Arima basically played fullback, so I guess they're being honest with their team list. The Roosters remain mathematically alive after their win last week. And you got to, with the upsets that can occur too, we look at the ladder and we say, oh, yeah, this team should beat that side. But you get a couple of upsets, for any of those sides that are in the finals race. And it keeps dropping down the required points that it might take to get in the 8. So you can't quite write off the tricolours. And they're at home here, and I expect they'll get the win. And my best bet is minus 9.5, $1.90. I know the Finns went close to beating Newcastle, as close as anybody's been to beating Newcastle for the last 6 weeks, and you get Stone adding some toughness off the bench. But I still like the home side here, and it's a common dilemma. If I'm going to stand back at how I'm viewing this round, invariably after you've had a tough round, you're going to ask yourself, am I misjudging some of these teams that have let us down, or some of the sides that I'm going against? And then I kept asking myself, I can't keep going against the same teams or keep going on the same sides. Like, do I believe it's going to be different? But sometimes you have to stick to your guns, and sometimes it can just be 1 week. And, the Dolphins could have beaten the Knights. On the other hand, he scored 3 tries after a questionable sin bin. Maybe it's a regulation win for the Knights, if not for that. So you guys know me that I do have a tendency to stick to my guns. I am going against a lot of these interstate travellers, second week in a row for the Finns. They've got to travel. And what clinches it for me is that the Roosters have already been ambushed by these Finns, which was the season opener, the inaugural Artie Beetson Cup. So I do recall that game. What stands out the most was the violent hitting. And it's funny because everyone's going to be on notice after the way the game was officiated. The games were officiated last round. But I do think the Roosters pack will take up the challenge, and the Roosters outside backs will enjoy the fruits of that and win this well.
I've been really underwhelmed with the Roosters this year. I think I've been pretty vocal with that on the show. The last time I was impressed with one of their wins was round 9 when they beat the Warriors 14-0 over there in Auckland in torrential rain. Sorry, you have to include that Titans win as well. How could I forget? Of course, the Titans game, if you exclude that one, which I did there intentionally.
They didn't play that bad last week either.
But I was just underwhelmed. Like, it's a win, but I expected them to beat Manly. I said they'd cover the line. I haven't rated Manly for a while here. But for the Dolphins, their effort has been there most weeks this year. So I do like them, particularly with a 9.5 head start. I'm not sure if you can get that at 10 on other platforms. That could be something to consider there. And of course, as you said, they did shock the Roosters last time, but it was the Dolphins' first ever NRL game. There was a lot of emotion in that. So it's probably not too much of a factor as we head into this one. I think for the Roosters, players like Radley and Jared Warrior-Hargraves are going to be on edge this week because they just saw one of their teammates, Nathan Brown, get sent off the week before. And they're the sort of players that if they do push it against players like Jesse Bromwich and Jared Wallace who can get under people's skin, they're going to end up in the sin bin. And if Radley or Warrior-Hargraves spend time in the sin bin, it immediately brings the Dolphins back into this one. So I can't rule out the Dolphins. I probably think the Roosters win, but I'm really attracted to that head start by the Dolphins just in case they do get the chocolates there. But they have only won 2 of their last 10 games. That being said, the Roosters have not won back-to-back since round 8 and 9. They are, of course, going for a back-to-back win here. But I just feel it's one of those games where people are naturally going to lean towards the Roosters, but they just have nothing to play for it this year. And I know you can make the same call for the Dolphins, but the Roosters just aren't used to being in this position. They're used to being comfortably in the top 4, or at least pushing for that top 8 spot like last year. This year, I think the players realize it's probably out of reach now. So I like Dolphins in this one. I like Dolphins at the line, and I like Hammer, anytime try scorer. If he goes to center, I believe he'll be up against Joey Manu, and I think he'll really rise to the occasion like he has in Origin when he's placed up against Turbo, etc. And I think Hammer could get a try as well. So yeah, my play, Dolphins at the line, Hammer ATS. Sunday, Storm v Raiders. We're at Amy Park, and the line is set at minus 11.5 in the Storm favour, who welcome back Jerome Hughes and Xavier Coates. For the Raiders, they will be without Sebastian Kris. Ethan Strange, the MVP in the Origin Under-19s game for the New South Wales Blues, he's named to debut there. His sister plays NRLW. His dad's an NRLW coach. A family that loves their footy. Great moment there. How are you leaning this on, Winnie? Have you got to pick either way?
Well, this game has massive top 4 implications, especially after South's soft effort last week. Melbourne grabs the top 4 spot by the scruff of the neck if they win here, which is expected by the market. However, the Raiders, with their negative points differential, the team that can't beat anybody 13 plus all year, are still in the race for the top 4 themselves. And if the Raiders were to win here in Melbourne, which is not an unfamiliar proposition for the Green Machine, they'd be basically 50-50 to finish top 4. They'd be the most favoured side to get that 4th of 4 spots. I'm obviously throwing Penrith, Brisbane, and throwing New Zealand into the top 3. So it's a huge game. And when you look at it in that context and you add in the fact that Canberra beat the Storm in Melbourne last time they played, and the fact that when you kind of look at the Storm season, you wouldn't say they've had a great year. Like, they lost at home to the Dogs. They got smashed. They lost to the Titans. They lost, just the other week when leading 12-0 to the Knights. They lost last week by 20 points. And yet, here they are controlling their top 4 destiny and have had some injuries, but all their best players are either available or, like, you've got Pappenhausen's actually on the horizon. So I feel like the Storm would almost take the position that they're in. And I could argue that this is their biggest game of the season because of the stakes. So I can't play Canberra despite the fact people are going to see this and say that line seems pretty high. You can even get 12.5 if you do like the Raiders. People might take the plus 12.5 and might think, hey, Hughes was named a week ago and then was withdrawn. That could happen again. But it goes back to me when I consider the importance of this game. I think Melbourne won't be overly cautious. If Hughes can potentially play, they've got to treat it like a finals game because reality is the Storm's next 2 opponents, I believe, are the Titans and Dragons. Hughes can sit those next 2 out if they need to. They have to win this one, and then they're going to be all right. And then for the Raiders too, I think Kris is a significant loss. Well, it's a big ask for a guy that's so young as Strange to come in there. I still think the Raiders are a pretty solid side, so I'm not going to go against Canberra, even though I think that Melbourne will put up one of their best performances of the year. I liked Canberra when they were getting 8.5 in New Zealand a couple of weeks ago, and you'd say this is a similar challenge now, and they're getting even more points. And I'd love to see the upset because that would actually revive South's top 4 probability. But I just don't think you make money long term going against home sides that are dialed in and desperately need to win, and that's the case with Melbourne.
And you're right about this, Storm. Their run home after this game is the Dragons, Titans, and Broncos. So 2 really tough games to finish the season there. The Raiders are such a weird old side. I'm going to tip them here. But then I'll probably tip the Bulldogs against them next week. The reason why is the Raiders just seem like that side where they really need to be galvanized. They need to have their backs against the wall. And Ricky Stewart's such a great people motivator. He creates this narrative down in Canberra that the game doesn't care about us. We're secluded down here. We're away from Sydney and Brisbane and the big markets. And so I really think the Raiders' backs are against the wall at the moment. But we do know the Storm, they don't lose very often back-to-back, particularly when they return home to Amy Park. So I think this is set up as game of the round. Where it gets super interesting here, the Storm have only lost 1 home game at Amy Park all season, and the Raiders have won their last 5 straight at Amy Park. So both sides have a great record at this venue. And for the Raiders stat there, I really think it is Ricky Stewart getting this side up for the challenge of going to Melbourne and beating Melbourne. You know what? I've got a bit of a bold prediction here. I think this one goes to Golden Point, and I think Raiders win it during Golden Point. I just go back to Ricky Stewart, great people motivator, the importance of this clash being top 4. I think he's probably able to spur more emotion out of his troops than Craig Bellamy, where I think Craig Bellamy is more tactical in what he does. Sometimes we see those games, though, Winnie, where just the heart and the effort gets you there. So, yeah, my play in this one is a draw at full time or Raiders at the line. I still think there's a bit of value there, plus 11.5. Final game of the round, Sunday, Knights v Bulldogs at McDonald Jones Stadium. The line is set at minus 8.5 in the Knights' favour, who are without Bradman Best, and Nari Chihuahua comes in to replace him. For the Bulldogs, they welcome back Luke Thompson for his first game this year. You've been really keen on the Knights in recent weeks during their 5-game win streak, but in this one, you're going either side 1-12, even though their last meeting was a 66-0 thrashing. Any key reasons for that?
A few. So, yeah, if I take either team 1-12, that is a pseudo play on the underdog. So it's fair to say I'm standing in front of the Knights here. And then I said before, the Knights could have lost to the Dolphins, but also could have won more comfortably if it had gone a different way. And this role that Newcastle's been on probably began that week against the Bulldogs, where they demolished them 66-0. So for some people, they won't look much further into this matchup and they'll say, well, the Dogs aren't going to improve by 60 points, so I know who's covering this line. But I would caution, that it's a little bit different. You have a guy who had one of the best games of his life in Bradman, and he's not going to be playing this week. And I feel like there's a trickle-down effect that Ponga has been the most devastating player in the competition over that time period. When you got Best flanking you outside, it makes that left side attack so threatening, and it won't be as scary this week for the Dogs' right edge defense. You've got the Knights have been to Perth while the Dogs enjoyed the bye. So a bye this time of year is certainly beneficial unless you're a dead team who doesn't come back with focus in the latter stages of the year. And that is a risk that we take with the Dogs and saying they won't lose 13+, because nobody's going to be worried about the Dogs winning 13+ in this game. But I just think that humiliation of that defeat in recent memory works in our favour and in the Dogs' favour. I know Daniel Saifidi might be back for the Knights, but Luke Thompson, he's been playing New South Wales Cup. He is back for his first game for the Dogs this year. They hadn't even signed Toby Sexton when these sides last met. He's improved the team and freed up. Birdo, Kickout has only returned in recent weeks. Liam Knight was signed mid-season, has been a bench boost. So the Dogs are quite a different side, and they are significantly stronger. If you're asking me who wins, I appreciate it's hotting up for tipping comps. I'll still tip the Knights. Unless you're really going for a wild upset and you want to pull one back on everybody else, I wouldn't rule the Dogs out. But I think Newcastle wins. But I will just say one more thing. we sometimes refer to the Rugby League World Cup. I don't know if you were going to go here, Clarkey, but opening game of the League World Cup, England beat Samoa. I think it was like 66-6. Well, 5 weeks later, they met again, and England lost in golden points. So it can be turned around. Whether it's turned around completely, I don't need it to be. Just either team, 1 to 12. $2 is the best price on 365.
Even money seems really great value there. And I've got another example of teams coming back. Looking at the changes while you were speaking then from this round 18 Bulldogs side to now, Averillo wasn't the fullback. Blake Wilson wasn't in the side. Toby Sexton, who when he's played 80 minutes, apart from the game of the Broncos where he got knocked out, he's won both of his Bulldogs games there. Viliami Kikau, Kyle Flanagan, and Luke Thompson, and Liam Knight. So there are some big changes to this side. That being said, I still like the Knights in this one. They've won 4 of their last 5 against the Bulldogs, and I believe they're riding a 5-game win streak. We can't forget the last time these two sides played. Of course, we have to look into it somewhat. It was a 66-0 thrashing. But when we look into that, it doesn't have to be a positive for the Knights and a negative for the Bulldogs. It could be the old Uno reverse card. No doubt the Bulldogs remember that. They remember the humiliation. Reid Marnie remember jumping on Twitter and being abused by 1,000 people, and then being the headline the next day because in the press conference he said, if you're not going to support us, get off the bus. There's a lot of emotion that goes into this. And the last time we had 2 teams that went into a game with a lot of emotion, the Cowboys beat the Tigers 74-0. They beat them by that margin because they were smashed by the Tigers earlier in the year. But I do think as we hit round 24, the Knights should have enough momentum to come over the top here, particularly late. How many points get scored between these sides for me really depends on the Knights' defense. I think they're good enough to defend their way to victory and also chase points if required. So therefore, I am going to go a little bit bold with my play. My play in this one when he's actually Bulldogs halftime, Knights full-time. That emotion for the Bulldogs, really raw energy and commitment to everything in the first 40 minutes. But then I think the Knights riding a 5-game win streak, we have to acknowledge their class and their form. I think it could be enough to come over the top there. And come out the victors there. You like that bold?
I did actually, I did consider the Dogs first half line where if I would be able to get a +4.5, and my thinking was we'll kind of be able to tell if they've come back from the bye switched on or not. And if they're behind by a converted try or more at halftime, you're not going to feel great about their ability to cover the full line. But I ultimately went either 1 to 12 just to lengthen the amount of gameplay. And the question there from Ryan, would you still play $1.90? That's fine. I still think this is going to win more often than not. In fact, I'll give you a bonus. I'll give you a bonus tip. Well, a little hack. There's actually a way to play this bet that will win even more often than my best bet, and that is to go same game multi on Sportsbet and play the +12.5 on the Dogs, and then drag that alt line ticker all the way to +13.5 on the Knights, and I think you get like $1.88. So you could even win if the Dogs win by 13, which would be even better than my bet. But the reason I didn't make that my best bet is that's $1.88. This is $2. So this is the optimal play for me in terms of value. But that's how I see it anyway. So any variation, I'm hoping that my best bets may not have quite won 55% of the time this season, but I wouldn't be picking something if I don't think it's going to win at least that often.
Absolutely. And also keeping it simple for the co-host who's still learning the ropes, being myself. That's all we've got time for in our show tonight, guys. We want to say thank you very much to everyone who joined us. We want to wish you all the best luck with all your bets and tips this weekend. And we will see you Sunday at 6:15 p.m. to recap everything for the round. That's all from me. Thank you very much. And over to you, Winnie.
I forgot to share the best bet. The mixed matchup. But that's because it ties into that final game. So my final note will be that the mixed matchup is going to lever off of the Bulldogs, and I'm going to pick them in a daytime game to end up with more points than the Dolphins would have scored the night before against the Roosters. Both these teams are predicted to score right around the same number of points, which is about 18. So think to yourself how you feel about that. I think the Roosters can keep the Finns under that number, and I think the Dogs are a greater chance of exceeding it. 220 if you like that matchup. Max stake 200 you can have on Toppy with our promo code TP Live if you do need an account. Best of luck with any of your own bets, or if you're jumping on my 4 best bets and my mixed matchup. Enjoy the round of footy as always, guys. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be back Sunday night to recap hopefully a successful week. Thanks to you too, Clarkey, and